Hello and welcome back to Autistic After Hours. I'm your host Ashra, and today I wanted to talk about the experience of always feeling sick as an autistic person, but more specifically, I wanted to talk about what I've done recently that has changed this for me. It has been like a huge realization, and it's something that I feel like I realized a long time ago, but I didn't actually start implementing until recently. And it has completely kind of fixed this problem for me. Before we get into the episode, quick reminder to follow Autistic After Hours on Instagram. I post original content on there every single week. Also, be sure to follow along wherever you're listening, whether that is on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. It helps me out a lot when you follow along. So the first part of this that I wanted to talk about is the experience of always feeling sick, just like chronically not feeling good as an autistic person. And I also want to say more broadly as a neurodivergent person, because I think this can apply to other forms of neurodivergence as well. But for as long as I can remember, even my earliest memories as a child, I dealt with chronic feelings of sickness inside of my body. It was most often manifesting as stomach aches. I've always had stomach issues like irritable bowel syndrome. I've always had like really bad gas pains all the time. There was a stretch of my life, probably like I would say for most of my life, where I ended every single day having to lay on the bed for hours on my stomach because the pain was so unbearable that I was like bedridden from it. And I would have stomach aches like this every single day. I remember the earliest memories of this happening were when I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. I remember my sister like always trying to help me through the stomach aches. It was just a constant issue for me where every single day I would have these stomach aches and it never was treatable. Like I went to doctors, I even had ultrasounds done on my stomach, and this was all the way through recently. I remember I'd had ultrasounds, I had allergy tests in high school and college. This was a constant problem for me, and no doctors were ever able to diagnose me or figure out what was wrong. And after so much time of like talking about this with other autistic people, doing my own research, I've realized that I probably do have IBS, and maybe I have other things going on as well, like actual health-related issues that I don't yet know about. But one of the biggest contributors to this constant pain and like sickness that I've always felt is actually nervous system dysregulation. And this was not told to me by a doctor or anything, so please understand that this is just my opinion and my best guess. But I am not a professional, and this is not medical advice. But what I've found in my own life is that I've had this constant feeling of dysregulation, and it's usually brought on by overstimulation, especially from overstimulating environments like very loud environments, very sudden sounds, or high social environments. So where I have to be highly social, or where there's a lot of talking, where there's a lot of energy, like I'm just around a lot of other people. Those are mostly the times where the sickness comes and like the stomach aches come, and where I end up feeling like burnt out, exhausted, and physically sick. So it's usually in response to overstimulation. And it took me a really long time to piece this together, because at first I thought like maybe it's something I'm eating, or maybe like I have something wrong with me health-wise, or maybe it's just irritable bowel syndrome. But I realized over time, it's taken me this long, I'm 28 years old, it's taken me this long to realize that it's usually connected to overstimulation. And I look back and I realize like the times when this would always happen was when like there was a lot of fighting going on in my household, when I was going to school and I was in classes that made me anxious because there was a lot of like communication, like it was communication heavy. I had to do a lot of talking in the class. It was any time where there was a high amount of external stimulation, whether that be like sound or any like overwhelming sensation coming from my environment, or whether it was social. So I realized it was very heavily connected to those things for me. And after realizing that, I started using accommodations, of course. So it was probably a few months ago when I realized, okay, this is probably nervous system dysregulation leading to these sickness feelings and leading to like the chronic pain and the chronic stomach aches and all of these struggles, these health struggles that I've been having. So I started accommodating for myself more. I started realizing like I need to always bring my noise canceling headphones when I go places. I need to bring fidget toys with me. I need to make sure I'm eating, make sure I'm drinking. I started to really accommodate for myself. However, I was still failing to do this one key thing, which is what I want to talk about today. And it took a reframe that I've only very recently figured out. So basically, what I realized is I had been using my accommodations as emergency tools, not as preventative tools. So let me give you an example. I would go to a social event. Yes, I would bring my noise canceling headphones. I realized I had to do that. However, I would not use them until I was at a point of being desperate for relief. I wouldn't put the noise canceling headphones on until I was already so overstimulated that I've already begun to feel sick, and I would incur the negative effects of it, and I would be going home from that event feeling ill and having to like be bedridden for as long as it took for me to get myself better. And so I was already implementing the fact that I needed to use accommodations, yes, but I wasn't using them correctly. And not everyone has to use their accommodations like this. And so I'm not speaking for everyone, but for myself, I realized that I cannot view my accommodations as an emergency regulation tool. I need to view them as something that I have to use as a preventative tool so that I don't get to a point of being sick, so that I don't get to a point of having a shutdown. And this is really hard to do for a lot of reasons. And it took me so long to realize because it's difficult for a lot of reasons. Firstly, I have dealt with a lot of internalized shame and ableism, which is sometimes hard to admit, but it's the reality, where I've kind of shamed myself for needing to use these things. I sometimes am susceptible to the judgment that I receive from other people. Like, people look at me funny when I'm wearing my noise canceling headphones, or they look at me funny or like seem confused by me when they see me using a fidget toy. And it's hard to continue doing it when you see that people are like reacting to you in this way, where they're maybe not necessarily looking down on you, but what you're doing is bringing attention to you. And that is really uncomfortable, especially as somebody who doesn't really like to be perceived, especially not in a way that I can control. So I've experienced a lot of shame and internalized ableism because of the way that I notice other people are perceiving and like reacting to me when I use accommodations. And it is just hard to push through that. It is hard to like put your needs and your safety and comfort before that when you feel so uncomfortable with being perceived and you know that what you're doing is bringing attention to you. I also, for my whole life, have felt like I needed to push myself. I've felt like my needs or my struggles were not as significant as they actually were because people in my life made me feel that way, basically. And I internalized this idea that instead of acknowledging my struggles as what they were and accommodating for myself, I needed to actually just push myself through them, and I needed to like ignore them and suppress them. And that is where masking comes into play. And I think this is a very relatable struggle for a lot of us, where we are taught that our needs are not valid. We are taught that we are wrong. We are taught that we need to push ourselves rather than accommodate for ourselves. And it's really hard to get rid of that mentality suddenly when you're an adult and you're realizing these things are not things that I can ignore. And if I do continue ignoring them, it will honestly probably lead to a shorter lifespan because of the amount of stress and pain and sickness that it causes me. So I need to start accommodating for myself in ways that are sustainable and actually going to help me, rather than just try and continue suppressing and ignoring these things because clearly it's not working. So I've realized that I have to use my accommodations as a way to prevent the negative things from happening rather than as a tool for when they are already happening. Because when I use them that way, it doesn't really stop the negative stuff from happening. It doesn't stop the sick feelings from coming because I'm already at a point where it's too far gone. And that is why my accommodations were not really working long term. They were more so in the moment providing relief, but I wasn't seeing long-term benefits of using accommodations. I was still dealing with sickness, still dealing with fatigue and burnout, and feeling like they weren't making that meaningful a difference for me because I was not using them preventatively. I was using them only when it was already too far gone. I was using them already when I felt sick, when I felt bad. So they were more like a band-aid rather than a long-term fix. It is really hard to remind myself that it's necessary for me to now switch and use my accommodations as a way to prevent shutdowns and as a way to regulate myself before doing difficult things rather than just using them for in the moment difficult things. Part of it is, again, because of like internalized shame and internalized ableism and because of the feeling of being perceived. But another part of it is also, like I mentioned, this need to push yourself, this feeling of like dismissing your needs, saying like, no, I don't need that. I can push myself. I've done this before in the past. Like I didn't use the noise canceling headphones in the past. I can push myself the way I used to, when in reality, I can't. I'm at a point where I can't keep pushing myself that way. And if I do, it will seriously start to negatively impact me, I think. And in like a really permanent way, I think I've been doing damage to my body and my mind for years because of the way that I've been suppressing and dismissing and ignoring my needs. And I think I'm at a point where I can't keep doing it. And it's going to just get more and more unhealthy for me. But it's hard in the moment because you constantly compare yourself to what you used to be and who you used to be and what you used to handle. And so it's hard to even think in the moment like, no, I need to do this now so that I don't suffer later. It's just hard to show up for yourself in that way, but it's also hard to like create the pathway in your mind of reminding yourself to do these things because it is so new to you to even have the opportunity to accommodate for yourself like this, because in the past maybe you didn't even have the choice, you didn't even have the opportunity because it wasn't given to you as an option. The only option was to push yourself. And now that you have this option, it's hard to actually use it. It's hard to know that you're worth taken care of in this way. And this is something that I've really struggled with, but I've realized it's so worth it because it has helped so much with taking the sickness, the chronic feelings of being sick away. And this is the only thing that has ever helped me. And I've noticed it in the past few months. I've noticed a huge impact from making this switch. I really wouldn't be sharing this with you if I didn't realize and know how important it was in my life. And so I think maybe it could be important for you too. But I've started to take care of myself using my accommodations in ways that I did not realize I had to do before. I've started to use my accommodations as a preventative tool, really, so that I don't end up getting to the point of having a shutdown, whereas I used to in the past have shutdowns like all the time, because again, I either wasn't using accommodations at all or I was using them once I already felt so overstimulated. So some things that I've been doing are, if I know I'm going to be doing something that is difficult for me, I will wear something really comfortable. Like I will go into it knowing that I should be comfortable. I will not wait until I'm uncomfortable to try and change that. I will try and be comfortable from the get-go so that I don't end up getting to a point of severe discomfort. If I'm going somewhere where I know there's going to be noise, I will wear my earbuds, my Flare calmer earbuds, or I will wear my noise canceling headphones, knowing that it will prevent me from getting to a really bad point of overstimulation from sound. Another really big thing is that when I go to social events, I will leave early enough so that I'm not pushing myself to stay too long to a point where it will again lead to me feeling sick. If I overstay and overpush myself with social things, that is probably the worst sort of overstimulation for me. And I will, like 100% of the time, end up feeling terrible from doing that. And so I've realized that I need to leave before I start feeling bad, because if I wait until I feel bad, then it only gets worse and worse and worse, like a snowball effect. And it gets to a point where then it's like punishment, where I'm getting this bad reaction from the social thing, and then I don't want to do more social things. And so it's just all in all a bad situation. So I realized I need to know in advance that like I'm leaving early. That's it. Like I'm going to have to leave early. I can't push myself to overstay, even if that disappoints other people. And then I leave, and I leave while I still feel good, so that I come out of it with a positive experience and I don't feel as sick. Sometimes I might still feel a little bit overstimulated just because socializing does that to me in general, but I at least don't wait until it's a point where I'm already sick. And so these are things that I've been doing to, in advance, take care of myself, in advance, accommodate for myself, so that I'm not only using accommodations when I already feel terrible, because that just hasn't worked for me long term. So I hope that this is helpful. That's really all I have for you today. I just wanted to share this because it has made such a big impact for me. For the longest time, I thought that I had like some severe sort of allergies or something like that, and that's why I was having all these stomach issues. But I realized that for me, the biggest part of it has been this. It's been that I just haven't known how to take care of myself. I haven't made the reframe of using my accommodations as preventative tools rather than as tools only in emergency when I'm feeling terrible. And this has changed so much for me. It's been so long since I've had that chronic sickness feeling inside of me. It's been like months now because I've made this change. So I'm curious to hear in the comments if you've done something similar, or if you're thinking of doing this, and how it goes for you. It's worked a lot for me, at least so far, and I hope that it continues. But as always, remember, autistic adults exist. We deserve awareness, support, community, and acceptance, and I'm so grateful that you're here. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.